Welcome to the Lean AI podcast, where we're flipping the AI conversation on its head by focusing on holistic strategies and tactics that drive AI adoption, rather than focusing solely on overcoming the technical challenges of AI. In every Season 2 episode of the Lean AI podcast, we talk with corporate AI leaders just like you, who've uncovered the secrets of driving successful adoption with far less wasted time and investment. Our guests challenge established views and offer disruptive perspectives, providing you with new actionable insights. All right, Kunal, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Ben. Excited to be here.
So today we're going to discuss your recommendations on how companies can successfully embed AI into their products. And you've written a great article called What CXOs Need to Do Differently to Get ROI from Generative AI. We're going to include a link to that in the show notes. And in our discussion, we're going to be covering a few of your recommendations from that article, plus covering a few additional topics. But before we get into that, could you tell the audience a little bit about your background? You've had some really interesting experiences at a variety of companies.
Sure. So I started, believe it or not, as a Java programmer and was doing so for as long as 2 months before I decided to quit it and start doing something totally different that nobody heard of. So almost 2 decades back, there was not even a word called as data science or AI for that matter. It used to be a really obscure blue collar job like data mining, where you go and sniff out some patterns in the data. And that's what I started doing simply because it was challenging, it was fun, and I thought it is closer to my actual formal background in electrical engineering. So been doing that since then, always looking for more interesting problem to solve. Now was part of Cognos and Spaces Labs. Then went back to school and got my master's in statistics from Harvard, and then came back to industry to essentially start running how AI products are built. So my first leadership role was at ADP to set up their AI lab on how they can infuse AI into their products. And then I came back to IBM to start its foray into embeddable AI. So currently, as a chief data scientist and distinguished engineer, my job is to make other companies succeed on their AI mission so that they get a positive ROI and build the products that is going to future proof the companies. So that's what I'm currently at, and that's a short journey.
Love it. And you left out some key experiences at companies like Aon and T-Mobile as well, right?
Yeah, so those were some of the early adopters in what we used to call data mining. So T-Mobile, when I was there, no, we were part of I was working in Germany and some company called Deutsche Telekom, which had a largest data warehouse in the Europe. And just figuring out a pattern of what customer want and a very old school take was a lot of fun. Before big data tools or anything that we had. So managing 200 million rows on every monthly data was a lot of fun with different file systems and how to make some of the algorithms run back in the day. Another fun thing was my grad project. Like some at that time was to teach machine how to write poems. And long before the word generative AI became so cool, and anybody saw value in it.
That's great. And I think just with such a amazing group of experiences, all the way from schooling all the way through to until now, makes you really qualified to talk about some of these topics that we're going to cover today. So let's hop right in. You recommend that CXOs dream big, as you put it in your article. Can you expand on what you mean by that? Because I think everybody could maybe nod their head and say, yeah, we should dream big. But what does that actually mean? And maybe how is it favorable to a more grassroots approach where everybody just tries AI at the company and finds out what they like?
So the idea about AI is that it is supposed to revolutionize the thing that you are doing, your processes, your workflows, or basically running your operations. Now, that requires a very clear vision that somebody at the top has to set up. Now, when we say dream big, the idea is do not try to replicate what is already happening by putting AI into it as a side hustle. So, if you want to be successful in AI, you have to be AI native or AI first company, which is a different mindset than let me put AI here and there and see some incremental gains. I I mean the example that I love is that of when first iPhone came. It was a transformational move in the way phones were before that. And look at the first level of apps that were there in first 2 years. And you will find that none of those apps actually were mobile first or smartphone native. The best example is that of a radio taxi. There was an app on which you can go and actually call the taxi. Now, that is the idea where you are replicating an existing workflow. Why do you need to call it when you already have a GPS on that? So, if you see the picture that I always show in my lecture, is there was a Maps application, Google Maps, and there was a phone, a screen. It requires somebody to think, why don't I connect the two and build an Uber? So, what I see a lot currently is that people are looking for ways to automate their existing workflow. And that is not going to give the 10x return that every CXO want when they make GenAI investment. So, you have to dream big if you want to see the return. And sometimes it is an imperative because the cost of building the AI product is so high. Unlike you doing web services or website building, which is a very low cost, the cost to build, infer, and manage the team for AI is extremely high. So you can never see the value out of it unless you actually think big on how I'm going to completely tear down the existing structure and look for not just like efficiency gain here and there, but rather think like how can I simplify? As Elon like to say, the best part is no part. Can you get rid of something altogether with the help of AI? So that's the idea of dream big and have a long term vision of how I can succeed in what I want to build with GenAI.
I like that. And I think it's interesting because I think that's good advice. Also, in your article, you recommend that people forget about AI and focus on products. And so those could seem contradictory, but they aren't. Could you maybe help the audience understand what you mean when you say, forget about AI and focus on products, but also, dream big when it comes to AI and be AI native?
Yeah, absolutely. As in the idea that everybody is currently running today is I need to do something with the AI. And it's like, yeah, but as a customer, do I really care? I'm walking in a, let's say you're walking in a retail store buying a shampoo and it says built with AI. Do you really care? Like whether it is built with AI or not, just because you put a like AI name on the top of everything, that doesn't change the customer's life. So you have to be obsessed with solving the customer's problem and not really obsessed with using AI. I always say, oh, let's use Gen AI. And now sometimes the problem can be solved in traditional algorithm, which will run at 1% of the cost. So forget even if you need Gen AI or AI. Are you obsessing in solving something that everybody struggles with? And that is the challenge that I think most companies have. They change their name from .com to .ai overnight, but that doesn't mean that the company's entire thought process is going to change. And you need to think is like, how can I build a product that change somebody's lives without actually using AI? In fact, I always say the companies that actually make largest use of AI don't even have it in their name. Like, do you go to Amazon because it uses AI? No, because it gives a great experience, or Apple for that matter. So you don't have to advertise it as long as you build the base product. And that may seem very obvious when you think about it, but that's not how most the decisions are made when the pitches are currently circulating in CXOs. They always want to hear, is am I doing something with the AI or am I missing the bus? The goal should be, am I giving some kind of a 50% improvement in the current workflow? Am I actually simplifying the time to achieve something for my customer? Am I reducing the cost by 20 and 30% to what it is now? Those are the KPIs customer and in enterprises care about, B2B, B2C, or whatever organization you are in, and not if you have actually adopted AI as a like organization.
Yeah, I love that perspective. And, we see that at the Lean Startup Company all the time. People that just want to do AI for AI's sake and don't just take a basic product mindset, starting with customer problems, and going out and experimenting on anything that's not aligned to a compelling vision, for example. So those are solid points. I guess the other thing is, embedded in your writings is the idea of solving customer problems, and that customer doesn't need to be an external customer, could also be an internal customer. So same thing for your employees or your staff. They don't care if it has AI either. They just want it to work better than the current workflow.
Yeah, absolutely. As in, you think of like people trying to do AI for everybody else, but not using it themselves. So yeah, I think and that reminds me of somebody I dated a long time back when I was young. So she was a physiotherapist and should always give advice on exercises to other, but she would never do it herself. She said, "Yeah." So, like, how is the life of your own engineers is being changed by adoption of AI is a big factor. I'll give one simple example is like uh, everybody who works with a client has some CRM system. And you go into the meeting by going through data from the CRM system. Like you find out how big is the deal, what happened, everything. And that is like 20 screens I need to navigate. Now, why not use Gen AI to come up with the summary of all the history that is with the for customer? Or as an engineer, you need to provision something. And believe it or not, AI makes a big use of GPU, but GPU provisioning is still very like old fashioned. Now, nobody has fully created a code gen workflow for GPU, which is what I tried in my team, or how you build the pipeline. So the best ideas on how to replicate, how to avoid replication and get the boost comes from your own team on what makes their day difficult. So yeah, my leader here used to say, "Tell us one thing that frustrated you this week." And that's the start of all the good ideas that you can solve with the Gen AI. And if you are not using it, you are actually not also seeing the challenges with the AI. Most people think that you build this solution and it's going to work the way you are expecting it to work and to be used by end user. The whole idea of a Gen AI is that ask me anything. So we always found that customers use it in a way that you never even imagine, simply because you made just ask me anything. So they will try to break it. And that is the big challenge for enterprises because unlike ChatGPT, which is actually very trained on an omnipresent data and works well in that context, in enterprises, it is normally not that omni channel experience that you it is designed for. And the best way to test your products is then again with your own employees. They will help you break it. So tell them, just break my solution.
I love it. I think it's also interesting, implicit in what you just said is you're not asking customers, in this case, it was internal or even external. You're not asking customers, hey, what should we build with AI? Because there's the Steve Jobs quote, right? Like, it's not the customer's job to know what they want. It's our job as entrepreneurs to understand the problems that customers have, including the internal ones. What frustrated you this week? And then the entrepreneur, the product team, it's our job to say, how might we solve that, given the technology that we currently have available? And that's especially true in the space of AI, where hardly anyone, including myself, knows what's possible. I mean, it changes on a weekly basis, right? And so I think it's really important for leaders out there to not focus on asking customers what they want, but to go out, find problems that are really juicy, that are worth solving, and then say, how might we solve that?
Yeah, and that just to add to that, there are two famous quotes on that as well. One is all the way from Henry Ford. He said, "If I would have asked people what they want, they would have said faster horse carriages." So don't ask them. But there is also bigger perspective to for CXS to keep in mind is what Jeff Bezos has said is like focus on the problem which would still be relevant years from now. So he said, like no one is going to wake up and said, I want to spend 2 hours shopping. Everybody wants lower and lower time on shopping. And everybody wants to have lower and lower prices when they shop. Those are the fundamental problem if you think about the retail as a business. And those are the problem if you are obsessed about, you'll be in a business for decades. So it's the problems that matter, and you're absolutely right. Asking people normally ask, "What can we do with AI?" Forget it. Just tell us your like the most frustrating problems, and then figure out what you can do about it.
Hi, this is Jonathan Burfield, Senior Director at the Lean Startup Company. If you're a corporate executive looking to drive broad adoption of the AI-centric products you're developing with far less wasted time and investment, we invite you to join us for a free 45-minute one-on-one consultation where we'll help you understand key tactics for validating use cases early in the development journey, to identify the optimal sequence for rapidly driving to scale, and to navigate the potholes that have tripped up other leaders in similar roles. Head over to leanstartup.co/contact-AI to reserve your spot. You'll find this link in the show notes, but don't wait. Spaces fill up fast, and we don't want you to miss out. Again, that's leanstartup.co/contact-AI. Let's make successful incubation and scaling of AI-centric products a reality for your team today.
Yeah. I mean, the best innovation doesn't happen when you ask people what they want and then you build that. And to use the Henry Ford example, and there's always debate about whether Henry Ford actually said that or not. I don't think it matters, because the quote is what's interesting. Is why are they asking for that? So don't take it at face value. But why are they asking for that? Well, because it's really a pain to get to work or to get around, and it takes forever. And your horse gets sick and it's unreliable, and there's, you need to feed the horse, and there's manure, and there's all these things. How could we make it simpler, right? And so it's something that we're always encouraging our clients at Lean Startup Company to look at is, if we really have a tight problem statement defined, that's a problem even if our company doesn't exist, right? Even if even in the absence of any solution, that problem still exists for years to come. So I love the perspective that you shared on that. Let's jump into funding, because I think that's something that you've really got some strongly held opinions on that are highly beneficial. So in your article, you wrote about burning star syndrome for CapEx. And I love that you named it that, because I remember it now, because it's a very unique way of phrasing it. Can you help the audience understand a little bit about what you mean by burning star syndrome for CapEx?
Let us start with something that everybody knows, which is that AI is very expensive. So, like, look at the numbers for 2025 projected by all the big tech. It is 100 billion for, I think, Amazon, 75 to 80 for Google and Microsoft. I think another 100 billion for Apple. I just counted on Max 7, and it's almost 600 billion in capex for them. Now, then that is just that, and forget all the other players like Salesforce and IBMs and Oracles of the world. And all this money, like let's say 1 trillion in capex spending, is going to be absorbed by somebody who is building applications on the top of AI. Now, that cost that somebody as a startup is absorbing, they need to recoup that somewhere. So I always try this like analogy to tell to startups is ChatGPT or Amazon for that matter is in the not in the business of AI. They are more in the business of compute. They are selling you the compute, but your customer is actually not going to care about that. He's only care about the value you are adding to their life by AI. So you have to navigate carefully in how much your capex cycle is going and how fast you are burning it out. Because if you are trying to build a really big model and burn out a lot of cash too quickly, then you will not be able to see the ROI from GenAI. Everybody who is in enterprises know that it requires couple of years before you start seeing the money flowing down in the positive ROI sense. Uh, if you want to survive till that point, you need to project how much money you can spend on training and inference. And saw so many startups which had great ideas, but they never reached a point where they had a stable model that they can commercialize. So the challenge that startups face is exactly the startup challenge that big companies also face, which is that everybody is spending so much in building AI, but then where is the ROI coming out of it? I think the great example is last week's result from Salesforce, where they said that Agent Force isn't going to add to revenue anytime in 2025. Now, that should be an eye opener that it takes longer time for your AI investment to first see the light of the day for product being actually going into production and getting into customers' hand and then being adopted and then generating ROI. So I call this burning star syndrome because if you think about like what kind of a star harbors life, then it is not the biggest and the brightest because they burn out too soon and either become a black hole or turn and burst out in a supernova. And you will find many such companies somewhere in AI as well. At the same time, you can't be a brown dwarf, which is actually not burning any fuel and doesn't actually attract any kind of a critical mass for it. So it is somewhere in between, like our sun, which is runs dimly for long period of time and good enough to harbor life and sustain the ecosystem that requires to be successful. And that's the same thought process you need to have is yeah, how I want to build AI, I want to consume a lot of Gen AI, but how do I plan it out for next 1 to 2 years? And there is a such amount of what in executives a FOMO of Gen AI, or I normally call it FUD, like fear, uncertainty, and doubt about I don't want to miss the bus that they are jumping into the use cases whose actual value conversion doesn't match the investment being made there.
Yeah, so there is such a thing as is investing too much in AI too quickly, because then it's going to implode under its own weight. But if you don't invest enough, then you're never gonna harbor life, to use your to use your metaphor. And so it's somewhere in the middle. How do you? And then another thing that you'd mentioned in your article is basically having that compelling vision, that grand vision, but also getting really specific on executing maybe on a weekly basis. Can you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So any AI which has actually been successful has been built with a clear vision that lasted years. And something like OpenAI had a very decade-long vision of how they want to get there. So you are not going to build a Rome in a day, but at the same time, you have to make sure that you are actually going towards that path. So, and that has to be seen on weekly execution of how you are seeing the continuous improvement in your system. So we all say that AI is here to improve life, but if you are not seeing any improvement on, let's say, week on week basis or month on month with the product that you are shipping onto the underlying workflow, then how are you even sure that 1 year down the line this is going to work? So you have to measure whatever is your KPI. Let's say you are building an agent, which is supposed to simplify our business workflow that does say everything in CRM or everything in financial force. But if you don't measure it by shipping it regularly to your users, even if it is an internal user, then you will find that you built a product that is either not viable or not valuable. And there is another key aspect to it, which I normally think most CXOs underestimate, because when they work on the AI product, they treat it like other products. So they come up with an idea, they go and start building it. The big challenge with AI, unlike others, is that your idea may actually just not be possible with the current technology. I come up with so many sessions where is it doable? It may be doable if you are an open AI and want to invest in next AG ad, but can you actually bring a model off the shelf that is currently available and put it in production without doing an R&D to execute that idea? So is it doable? And that is a very important part to build a successful product. Is you need to pivot uh, always regularly to the correct direction in building that product by mapping, is it valuable, is it viable, and is it doable? So whatever is your grand vision, the weekly execution results gives you that signal of what is possible, and aim at actually building something that will be relevant.
I love that. I think, you're talking about in maybe some is phrased slightly differently, desirability. Is this solving a real problem, and is it creating value by solving that problem? Two different components of desirability, and then feasibility. Can it be built? And viability. Should it be built? And typically, with new product development or innovation or tech commercialization, companies tend to way over index on feasibility up front. So they'll spend just so much time on feasibility, and then 2 years later they'll actually test a first version of a product, even if it's just a marketing MVP, a representation, a brochure in effect, or a landing page, and find out they wasted all their time testing the feasibility of something that nobody cared about in the first place. However, notable exception, in the lean AI space, we actually do recommend more feasibility up front. Not too much, because again, it's maybe comfortable and you don't have to go out and find out that your baby's ugly by running experiments. But certainly a little bit more upfront. Can it be built in the first place? Because just to your point, we've seen that so many times where companies will get way down the line and then figure out they can't even build the thing in the first place. So I think that's a key element of a lean AI approach. Let's talk about the back to the funding and the kind of the continuous delivery. One of the things we've found, whether it's the AI space or corporate innovation or whatever, is, hey, we're working on something over here as the AI team, and keep giving us a lot of money. Maybe we're that star that's too bright, where we're burning really hot, right? And then just trust us that 5 years from now, we're going to come up with something that's great. And in the modern world of focus on short-term, quarterly results, return on invested capital, even if you've got a senior executive that says, "Yep, we understand it's going to take 5 years, we're gonna protect you," it rarely happens that way, because the leader moves on, or there's a stock price event, or something happens, and then there's a knock on the door, and someone says, "Hey, we've been giving you a lot of money. Where's the return? We need it now." And so I think establishing a path of quick wins to medium-term wins to long-term wins is implicit in what you're talking about, rather than just saying, "Hey, trust us, everything's going to be great eventually, but we're not going to ship anything. We're not going to demonstrate any proof points between now and 5 years from now."
Yeah, that is absolutely critical. In fact, I normally used to call myself an in-house entrepreneur, because I think that's the hat that anybody, yeah, if working in large MNCs, has to put on themselves if they want to be successful in AI. What do you do as a startup? You build something, you show it to investor, and you get more funding that, hey, I'm delivering some value. Now that is the same attitude big enterprises has to adopt when they are building AI. Because if you are not showing the value, then it becomes like a rabbit hole. In fact, many executives always, before GenAI, were shy of putting money in AI because they are like, oh, it's a rabbit hole. I don't know if when I will see something out of it. And that, to a large degree, I would say, is the failure of AI leader or the data scientist themselves. In fact, the joke is that a data scientist is a person who is very good at solving wrong problems. So it all boils down to, did you pick up a right problem? The problem, as I said, which is feasible, desirable, and viable. I mean, is the problem still relevant 2 years down the line? I mean, if you are building a wrapper on ChatGPT, those are all gone. And that is where you're building last year. All that code is now in the drain because with the agentic, all that thing is gone. So you need to have a perspective clearly. Did I find the problem that my end customer will pay top dollars for? I always call this cost cutting versus growth. If I built this product, is that is going to drive my growth, or I'm just trying to cut the cost somewhere here and there because it is very intuitive to do with the AI. Oh, I can replace that HR from 4 to 2 people. Okay, that's great, but is there somebody directly paying like a top dollars for it? So think in that way. Is it going to get me new customer? Is it going to increase the engagement of current customer, their satisfaction score? Something that directly affects your top line growth. And if that doesn't happen, if you can't relate to that, then and show that happening consistently or a quarter on quarter basis, then it will never fit. Like 2 years down the line, you bring something and it may not actually like gel at all with what customers were looking for.
Yeah. So I love this, and I mean the way to express that type of funding in lean startup parlance is metered funding, right? That's why startups don't get all the money up front. They get a small amount, very small amount, pre-seed and then Series A, Series B, and it grows as they demonstrate that there's a there. And so just to tack that on to the burning star analogy, so you've got to get your overall funding right, but then the way that capital is deployed is really important because you don't want to go all in on a few things and really hope you get it right. You want to take multiple smaller bets and use the data to determine what problems are worth solving and where are we really adding value, and that way you've got evidence as opposed to just conviction that you're investing in the right things in your portfolio. So we're getting close to being out of time here, and there's one more topic that I wanted to make sure that we covered, and that is you mentioned that companies should avoid the ITification of AI. And this is really important in terms of the talent, the teams that you have working on your AI products. Maybe expand on that a little bit if you could.
Yeah, I think there are two aspects to it. So when I say that AI is not IT, then it is like you come up with a problem and that you go and put some team around it and you expect like the problem will be solved. Now that there is a big unknown in AI, which is that do you really have the deeply skilled people who can actually solve this? There has been this idea that you can do prompt engineering. So anybody who knows how to write English is now an AI engineer. Now, I'm willing to stick my hat out and say that for any enterprise who wants to build real AI product, you still need expertise. You still need people who knows how the data science work, and for that you cannot just give them on 2 weeks training and expect that they deliver the value and build great products for you. So make sure that this is the part where you invest and get right team in place firsthand. And this is one challenge that people realize often when it is too late. AI is a game of quality. It is not the game where I built a website and you have a website and we are both okay. Uh, it is like you want something which is really good in terms of accuracy. So even if your team can take it from 0% accuracy, where you are probably today, to 50%, it is not good enough for to generate any value for you, because 50% accuracy is still crap as far as end customer is concerned. And you need to get to 80%, often 90%. And as you go closer and closer, it's like the speed of the light problem. You can accelerate something to 10% to the speed of light in your small lab, but to go to 99%, you need large hadron collider. And that is exactly the analogy that works in a complex AI project. So if you want 80% accurate result, make sure that you have that level of talent who knows how to do it or who has done it somewhere in the past. At least how I normally call it, one third of your team, just one third, if not 100%, who are deep experts and not starting, not just switch over from IT to AI yesterday because now it is the cool and thing to do that pays a lot.
So, Kunal, we're right at the end of our time together today. As you know, this podcast is built for corporate AI executives. What three pieces of insight would you share with them, even if we've already talked about them, that would really help them to be better at their job?
So, here is what I would say if anybody wants to successful in Gen AI. First, always dream big, but deliver in weeks. And dream something that you are actually simplifying the life of your end user. So simplify, simplify, simplify. That cuts the entropy from your end user than just doing AI for AI's sake. The second part is manage your funding really, really carefully. Make sure you are building something that has a clear vision of how it will be adopted, and you have CapEx figured out till then. The third and the most important part, which is often uh, overlooked, is what you need to build AI other than GPUs and the server is a great team. So make sure that you build an culture in AI for your AI success, a culture and a mindset which is about problem solving, which is about pushing the envelope, and where you can quickly adopt new techniques without having to over-index and rerunning your pipeline. So having that culture built ground up with the right set of people is what I consider will be a secret sauce that differentiate highly successful companies from the companies who are trying to do AI.
Well, that's great advice, and really appreciate you spending some time with us today. And again, we'll provide a link to your article that we've been referring to in the show notes. So thank you so much for your time, and hope to speak with you soon.
Thanks a lot, Ben. This was a lot of fun, and thanks for having me.
The Lean AI podcast is brought to you by the Lean Startup Company. To find out more about our Lean AI approach to generating more AI wins with far less wasted time and investment, including our training workshops, pilot programs, and full implementation offerings, visit us at leanstartup.co. Search the Lean AI podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a future episode. On behalf of our entire team here at the Lean Startup Company, thank you for listening and sharing with your colleagues and friends if you found this episode insightful.